When a movement that hates government tried to take over a small town, they must have realized there would be issues. They probably expected to be attacked by locals set in their ways, but they probably didn't anticipate that they would also be attacked by bears.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Weird World Podcast. My name is Carrie,
I'm Dean.
and Dean is going to tell us something about bears.
We'll get to the bears. First, let's set the scene. Just as a trigger alert, this episode is going to be a little bit political.
Oh.
Not going to make it overly political, but there is a political issue, or at least a movement underlying it, and
I don't think politics warrants a content warning.
To some people, it for sure does. Is the most important content warning. So I'm going to start with a little bit of history on the Libertarian movement. Libertarianism is a movement in the United States. Is also a party called the Libertarian Party. They're stridently anti-government. They say they love freedom and liberty above all else. They're very obsessed with property rights. That's kind of the freedom they hold most dear, it seems like. And other than protecting property and enforcing economic contracts, they basically don't believe government should really do anything else at all. So they're very much super limited government, no interference in your life as a freedom-loving human or in telling businesses and folks like that what they can do.
Okay.
The Libertarian Party in the U.S. traces its origin only to the early 1970s. It's actually hasn't been around as an official party that long.
Really?
Yeah. And at its birth, it had sort of these two halves. It had the part was kind of the hippie, let's legalize marijuana, leave us alone, let us live in our commune kind of a part to it.
Right.
And then it had those really, tax-hating, more conservative, small government or no government, so they could, run their businesses and own their property and do whatever they wanted to do from an economic standpoint. So it was sort of this party without a middle, without a center, two kind of extremes really held together somewhat tenuously by their hatred of government, but they hated government
for different reasons.
Very different things and different things that they thought government did to them.
Yeah.
So it's an unusual party. Over the last 50 years, though, and certainly very recently, Libertarian Party has really morphed into more of a purely very conservative right-wing movement that's fixated more on the weakening government for the purposes of business and from an economics perspective more so than a personal liberties perspective. Their presidential candidates still talk about that, but it really has taken it really has kind of become the less important part of their agenda, especially very recently. They're really more about liberating corporate interests and denying community obligations than they are kind of empowering individuals. They're still very anti-tax, and they're still very pro-property rights and things like that, but they really have become a little bit more economic. They retain the rhetoric of individual liberty, but the kind of the recent standard bearers of the party have people like Ron Paul or his weirdly afroed son Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, who really they're Republican. Notice that they're Republicans. The people who have any kind of political power in this country who claim that they are kind of a libertarian bent or proclaim libertarian principles are all very conservative Republicans now.
Because they're okay with government having a say-so in healthcare and women's bodies and all that kind of stuff. So.
They really do tend to. Yeah. I mean, you would think every once in a while, like a Rand Paul or something like that will, kind of do something. Like there was a conservative libertarian streak when there was those bills after 9/11. So it's a long time ago, 20 years ago after the bills, you did have some conservative libertarian types say, no, you can't do all this, all the, law enforcement have the right to search and seizures and things like that. And so there was that. That seems like it's really kind of withered on the vine a little bit lately. Again, I'm sure plenty of libertarians espouse that, but as a political movement, they're decidedly almost entirely now in the kind of far right MAGA camp. In fact, in 2022, the faction called the Mises faction, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, it's after the Austrian economist, the very conservative Austrian economist, Ludwig Mises, or whatever the hell his name is, this group that called themselves that, they actually officially kind of took over the party and steered it far, far to the right and again, kind of really institutionalized this economic strain of the party. So now they're kind of hyper-focused on anti-regulation, ending government involvement in anything to do with the economy, things like that.
They would also, I'm assuming, be very anti-intervention in foreign affairs. So they would be against foreign aid.
They should, well,
involvement in foreign
for different
wars.
reasons, though,
Yes.
than Donald Trump, for instance,
Of course,
is against foreign
of
aid.
course.
So, but yeah, they are. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to paint them as completely slapdash or just, dishonest. I bet you most libertarians still kind of believe in those precepts. But again, as a functioning political movement, the leadership, at least, has allied itself very much with the MAGA wing of the Republican Party.
Right. Yeah. It's just also in a pure form, libertarianism in a pure form is just not tenable in 2025. I mean, it could not ever work. It's like closing the barn door after the horse got out.
Sure, I like that. I wasn't sure where you're going, but I think that's fine. It could be a horse, could be a cow.
I forgot what the saying was, but
I'm not even sure that's it. Is it a horse? It could be.
It doesn't really matter.
No, it doesn't. We'll get into that a little bit later, though. Our story really is more or less exactly what you're talking about. Addresses kind of what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, this wing, the new libertarian leadership in the 2024 election, actually more or less kind of allied themselves with Trump and the Republicans, and they got their lowest turnout, the lowest share of the vote for a presidential candidate in some years. They got about 0.4% of the vote.
Yeah.
From 2012 to 2020, they were getting 1.2, 1 point something, 3.2 in 2016 when Gary Johnson ran as kind of a little bit of an alternative to Trump. Like he was trying to attract kind of sort of conservative Democrats or people who didn't like, or Republicans who didn't like Trump, who didn't want to vote for Trump, but didn't want to vote for the dreaded Hillary Clinton.
Right. Who was the candidate in 24? Was it
Michael? It was this guy who led this Mises faction of the party, Michael Heises or something like that.
So Gary Johnson's out?
Yeah, he ran in 16. I don't think he ran. He might have ran in 12. I don't remember. He didn't run in 24 then, though. But so anyway, they really have kind of adopted this sort of quasi alliance with MAGA Republicans, and the people who are of libertarian streak in the Senate and House are all Republicans, which is, of course, as you mentioned, a party that is very socially conservative and very interventionist in people's private lives when it suits them. So it is a little bit of a, there's a little bit of a backsliding on these core supposed principles and values that they hold dear. Again, I don't want to overdo that, though. I'll bet you money most people call themselves libertarian actually are much more consistent with their ideology than a lot of their leaders, I think.
Well, sure, because once you have any sort of once you've been elected, you can't hold true to your values, or you'll get
again. Rand Paul is probably the most famous overtly libertarian. If he could get elected as a libertarian senator from Kentucky, he would run as a libertarian. No questions. Same with Ron Paul, his father. So I don't know. Has he done? It doesn't seem like he did. He more or less falls in line with what Trump wants him to do for the most part, and while he's on his way to get another perm at the hairstylist because it looks phenomenal. In the early 2000s, though, some libertarians thought of a way that they could possibly work the U.S. electoral system in their favor and gain that taste of power that they've been denied forever. And never has been a libertarian person in Congress, a libertarian in the U.S. Senate. There's no libertarian governor. They have had some state legislatures elected, but they've had have won very few elections, even on the local scene. So in these early 2000s, these folks thought, hey, maybe there's a way we could beat that system, that winner-take-all U.S. electoral system that kind of works against us in a mass way. That's happened at a very local level, as in a little tiny town of about 1,000 people at the time that sat in the rugged forest of central New Hampshire.
Oh, of course.
So, yeah, I know.
I would have expected
not
Vermont or Maine or something like that, but close enough.
First, a little bit of background on this. So, as I kind of alluded to in our two-party system, third parties, small parties in the U.S., for our listeners who are not in the U.S., who live in a multi-party world, we live in a two-party world. Every other party that's not the Democrats or Republicans, it's just almost impossible in a winner-take-all system to get someone elected on a significant way, in a significant level. So a lot of libertarians realized that they couldn't compete like that. So they thought of a way that maybe what we can do is get a significant amount of power in a single state. And this group, it was founded by a guy named Jason Sorens. When he thought about it in 2001, he was a grad student for his PhD, a doctoral grad student in Yale University, and he called it the Free State Project. So Jason Sorens started talking to libertarians across the country and gathering this group around him with this idea of his. And the idea was that, hey, what if a bunch of us really committed, really active libertarians moved into a smaller state? Could we have enough numbers to make an impact on a state level?
What, him and his 13 buddies from Yale?
It starts, you start small, Carrie, and you grow. Okay.
Okay.
So they networked and they decided, okay, let's have a goal in mind. First, we're going to sign this pledge. And the pledge states that once we get 20,000 people who have signed this pledge, and what they are swearing to is that they will move to the state they choose to move to, that the leadership chooses to move to, at least no more than 5 years after they've got that 20,000 person goal.
Okay.
And so they were very strategic, and they looked into all states and said, okay, what are the things we kind of need where maybe we can gain power on a local level, or we'd have, that would be most amenable to us gaining power with 20,000 people. And they decided on the state of New Hampshire. It beat out South Dakota, Alaska, and some other smaller conservative states, because that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a pretty smart choice.
New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, yeah. It had a very small population
Yeah.
of at the time, 1.2 million or so. It's now about 1.4 million. Had a long history of being super anti-tax. And libertarians
Okay.
are real tax haters. Its motto is live free or die.
Yeah.
So it had this kind of freedom, personal liberty kind of bent to it. Had no state income tax, no state sales tax. It also had the highest per capita ownership of machine guns in the country.
Nice.
That's got to help.
Okay, question.
Yes.
With no state sales or income tax, how do they raise revenue?
That's a great question. Property tax. They have, ironically enough, for a Libertarian Party that hates properties, they have relatively high property taxes and just other various local taxes and excise taxes and things like that.
Huh.
But yeah, no state income tax, no state sales tax is hamstrung. So New Hampshire is kind of a small government environment anyway
I
already.
imagine they would have to be.
They're not as conservative. They're actually a pretty purple state now. Purple in the
Right.
sense of they voted for the Democrats for president. Both their senators are Democrats, but their governor is Republican. The legislature is Republican. So they're a very purple state. They're not as conservative as South Dakota and some of the Wyoming and some of the other states they looked at. But
And from what I understand, it's not a backward state. Like they have a fairly decent public education
they do.
system.
They do.
And
Yeah. But they thought,
so how I just don't know how they do it.
well, they thought that with the anti-tax
Yeah.
and the small government mentality and the history of that, they'd be able to merge with that local sentiment and bring in this just critical number of really committed people who are going to 20,000
Yeah.
activist libertarians with this dream could have an impact on that state. That was the idea.
Okay.
The 20,000 was a little delusional.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're not good at math. I'm not sure, but they thought that if there's this really core committed group and they can grow from there, they can kind of in a sense, kind of take over New Hampshire. That was the idea, to build this, show the world what a tax-hating, freedom-loving utopia could do. And everybody would realize, this is a great idea. Let's all be
Yeah.
libertarians.
Okay.
So the wait then began. So people are signing. They finally got to 20,000 pledges in 2016. It turned out that about 5,000 of those people then over the next few years had come to live in New Hampshire. So a lot of people said, maybe not. 3,000 of those 5,000 already lived in New Hampshire already. So
That's handy.
it was like 1,800 and something actually apparently sort of really moved to New Hampshire after the pledge goal was reached in the few years after that goal was reached. So it wasn't a stampede. So it's considered kind of a failure. It did kind of fizzle out. But that's the Free State Project movement. What happened was that back when that was being instituted, that was like the pledge went out, I think in late 2003. And that was the plan. Okay, we've picked New Hampshire. We've had this pledge out. Okay, that's the plan. We'll get back to you when we got 20,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a group of those folks who, though, were much less patient. And they thought, no. We can do something faster on a more local level than this whole Free State project. And this is back, so about early 2004, this splinter group moved off. And they said, we're going to do something called the Free Town project. So you guys, that's great. Go ahead and take over the state of New Hampshire. We're going to take over a town first, and we're going to instill our libertarian values there, have changed that town into this libertarian utopia and show the world on the level of a small town. They agreed that New Hampshire made a ton of sense. So they said, okay, that's great. You guys, a lot of those folks that already lived there and moved there. And again, it was relatively fertile ground for their mindset to a certain extent. So they said, okay, let's do this in a small town in New Hampshire. We can maybe take over that small town and, again, set up our system there. Show the world how you don't need government. This sort of beacon, right? They settled on the town called Grafton. You ever heard of Grafton,
Yeah.
New Hampshire? You have heard of Grafton, New Hampshire? Have you heard of Grafton, New Hampshire?
I've heard of it. Well, maybe I haven't. I've heard of Grafton.
What do you think is Sue Grafton, the mystery author who wrote A is for abracadabra and B is for beheading? I don't know.
Is there a Grafton in like one of the Dakotas or something?
Maybe, Carrie. But I'm talking about the one in New Hampshire here today. So
maybe I haven't.
This town seemed perfect. The property taxes were relatively low for New Hampshire. It was pretty small. At the time, it had fewer than 1,000 people. It also had no zoning laws. And this is pretty important since they knew, the Freetown people knew that, okay, not everyone's going to be able to come here and buy a home. So the fact that they have no zoning laws mean a lot of these folks can set up maybe alternative housing, which meant like tents and cabins and hovels and things like that. And, kind of bide their time and set up a residency in this town of Grafton in the meantime. Grafton is already, not coincidentally, home to John Barbarias, or Barbarias. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I apologize, John. I'm going to say Barbarias. That's how it's spelled. He was a software engineer. He was basically kind of the leader of the Libertarian Party within New Hampshire already. He had twice, in 2010 and 2012, been the standard bearer for the Libertarian Party in a race for governor. He had actually won a little bit over 2% of the vote in both of those races, which was a better than average showing for the party. Barbarias is there in Grafton. He's a leader, really kind of the leader of this Free Town project movement. He says, let's all come on, everybody. Let's come, all you libertarians, come here to Grafton. We'll, take over the town, and we'll show them how we can set up a paradise through just sort of like, the idea is that logic, all these libertarians, people are naturally logical and efficient and rational. And if you just act like that with one another, it instills a kind of magical community elixir. That means all your problems can be solved face to face. You don't need a government to tell you what to do. When people are freed from that external body, like the government telling them what to do, they'll all be very rational and they'll find their way to peace and prosperity. That's kind of the idea. That's a general idea. No libertarian will probably say it like I said it, but that's still what their general idea is, especially on a local level.
What's their philosophy on like city services?
You don't really need them. The private sector can handle that. Let the free market handle everything.
Okay.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And so, like I said, people are rational. People will figure that out. These institutes, Ayn Rand was known for that. Like, hey, when the government stops doing something, rational actors will set up private companies and institutions and things like that, and bodies to handle that thing. Don't worry about it. Not a problem. That's the idea.
Okie dokes.
So, in fact, they drew their lessons and were inspired by the books of writers like Ayn Rand, and also the experiments of micronations, these little tiny countries that libertarians would go on, like a little island in the Pacific, or there was one in the Caribbean. And we're going to do a world on micronations one of these days, I promise you. There's also one declared, it was a North Sea oil rig. They declared itself an independent country. So that was their inspiration for this. I'm not clear if they understood that Ayn Rand was writing fiction, terrible, terrible fiction, but she's writing fiction, and that all those micronations ended very badly. So they don't tend to be great students of history. But still, that was their inspiration. So in come all these true believers to Grafton, New Hampshire, to change the world. The town had long been sort of quirky. So it was. This is a good idea. This is probably the best place they could have done it. New Hampshire is probably the best state for the Free Staters to do this. Grafton's one of the best places they could have set up this project of this free town. It had followers of the South Korean Unification Church of the Reverend Sun Myung Moon, often called Moonies,
Yeah.
had come there in the 1990s.
Oh.
Hippies and tramps wander through all the time. It's just sort of a quirky,
Did you say hippies
funky
and
place.
tramps?
Hippies and tramps. I'm not. That's not a Cher song. That's not a. Those are old
What about the
words. I
thieves?
admit.
Oh, okay.
Hipsies. I did not. I said hippies, not the other word you're thinking of, Carrie. Okay, so not the G word. Many bought or rented homes. That's true, but a lot of these newcomers, they brought in like old, broke down mobile homes, or like just badly put together cabins. Many lived in yurts.
Oh,
Yurts,
nice.
and many just lived in tents. A bunch of these tent dwellers actually clustered in a location at the edge of the little town, and they called it Tent City. What they were doing, though, is what I alluded to a minute ago. They were there to establish residency. They
Right.
came in fast. They became residents of Grafton County and Township. Here's where the quirky history of New England comes into play here in the United States. The New England is the far northeast of the U.S. and has a long history of very local direct democracy, going back, I think, even to the pre-revolution days. So many towns like Grafton, some things would be decided by like a town council, but often big important issues would be decided by like a town meeting where everybody could vote. And they'd all, whoever's in the room,
Yeah.
and you're a citizen of Grafton, and you're, I assume, 18 years old, you could vote yes or no on like, the school budget or something like that. It was
Yeah.
so that was also another really, really good reason, because they didn't have to elect their people. They could elect their people to the town council, and they did, but they could also try to just be so numerous and, again, so committed. Because what do most people do when those kinds of things come up? They don't go. No,
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
the attendance is a small fraction but when you have this group, even a relatively small group of really committed, motivated folks who are going to show up for those things all the time and be in your face about it and be real kind of gadflies and busybodies, then they're going to have power that outsizes their population. But the population was a pretty appreciable part of the town. Pretty quickly, they went from about 900 plus to over 1,100, and then grew beyond that. There was a researcher named Matthew Hongoltz Hetling, and unfortunately, it's not the last time I'll have to say his name. He's a good writer, a good researcher. His name is really difficult. He wrote a book about this whole Freetown project in Grafton.
Yeah.
And his estimate was roughly about 200 in the first year. About 200 of these newcomers, these Freetowners, these committed libertarians, came into Grafton with their radical ideas, their wannabe alpha male attitudes, and often with their guns. Virtually all of them were white men. Not just white,
Shocker.
but white men. So again, no, not shocking at all.
I know.
And
You know what this sounds like?
what?
It sounds like Stars Hollow
Stars Hollow.
from Gilmore Girls.
Really?
Yeah.
That was real.
The whole town, meeting.
Well, wasn't that in Connecticut?
I'm not sure
It was
what
in New England
state it was
somewhere.
in. Yeah, it was in New England.
Okay.
It had to be near Connecticut because
I think it was. Although
yeah.
I've never seen the show. You've seen all episodes. I
Yeah.
imagine you should probably know.
you know what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll bet you it was
Okay.
Connecticut.
This cast of characters there's some choice folks came along in this parade of 200 or so committed libertarians. One was named Larry Pendarvis. He came to Grafton. He was a prolific libertarian, kind of like a writer and activist. I don't know what he did for a living, but he was a big part of local libertarian, movement where he was before. I think he lived in Texas. He believed, for instance, that organ trafficking should be legal and common. If you want to
Sure.
give somebody your kidney, knock it out. If someone has the money to buy it, that's between you and him. That's a contract. Government has nothing to say about that.
Uh-huh.
He believed that people should be able to fight duels to the death. He also believed that he had a, quote, God-given underappreciated right to organize so-called bum fights, unquote. So
Oh,
maybe that's what he
wow.
did. He did bum fights on YouTube, probably. I don't know. Pendarvis also felt strongly that, quote, consensual cannibalism, end quote, was a, quote, victimless crime, end quote, and should be perfectly legal. So if you want to let somebody eat your liver, you can do that. That's Larry Pendarvis. That's one of the folks who came to Grafton around 2004 or 5.
So he's a psychopath.
He's committed idealist is what
Okay.
I characterize him.
I mean, if those are his top issues with libertarianism, then he's a psychopath.
He caused a little bit of a stir in town when people kind of like Googled him and found out about him because he was not well known, but he had writings and things like
Yeah.
that that were searchable. And so he was kind of made it clear he wasn't very welcome there. And he actually took his mail order Filipino bride. Not a shock that guy would have a mail order bride.
Yeah.
And he moved back to Texas, where he then partnered with another libertarian in an attempt at a land swindle. and he was chased out of town by the local sheriff and told, if you come back here, I will arrest you and put you in jail. John Connell was told by God to move from Massachusetts after selling all his assets, of course, and he had found a church in Grafton as part of the Freetown Project. He was a Freetowner, a libertarian.
Okay.
So he did his church, and he got this old building, turned into a church, and he did these ranting sermons. But his main concern was using that to get of course, a tax exemption. That was what he was all about. By the way, he sought this tax exemption from the IRS at the same time that they held the IRS was illegal and had no say over him and couldn't tax him at all. So you find a lot of that in libertarianism as well. The tent city that I mentioned a minute ago, that was set up by a guy named Adam Franz. He wanted it to become kind of this, like a haven for survivalist types, almost like think of a planned community, but for survivalists. I don't know if they'd always live in tents. Maybe they'd build homes eventually one day.
Yeah.
He and everybody who came to live with him in Tent City had absolutely no survival skills whatsoever. They didn't know the first thing. It's like, what side of the tree is the moss on? We don't know. Is that level of wilderness? Know nothing. And lastly, there was also a guy named Richard Angel. He went by the nickname Dick Angel because he was on a crusade to ban circumcision. So these are just a little taste of the folks who came. Now, I want to be fair.
Well, what's wrong with that? I'm with that guy.
Dick Angel. Okay, come on, man.
I mean, who cares what his name is?
Okay, Carrie. He's a little weird.
If his cause is anti-circumcision, then
I suppose. But anyway, most of these folks were normal people. In fact, one person who we'll get to the story, but had some problems with him, said, "Look, on a personal level, when you're dealing with him, they were mostly, for the most part, okay people, rational people. Is when they tried to, turn their ideas into practical policy that they became irrational and very difficult to deal with."
yeah.
So not everybody was a cannibal or an organ trader, but they were these I've known plenty of libertarians in my life. They are almost always, they think they're the smartest person in the room, no matter what room they're in. There's zero compromise or zero acknowledgement that you may or may not have, you may have a point, or they tend to be very intransigent. They tend to be very just my way or the highway. Mm-hmm. They're not good for a political system. They don't contribute in any positive way. I know I'm leading my bias show. But still, just for me on a personal level, that's what I read in this from the researcher. But for me on a personal level, the true, real libertarians I've met are not easy to deal with, and interface with. They're difficult. That's just my personal experience. Sorry, and I've known a fair number of them.
I don't think I have.
Oh, I have. Well, I'm in grad school.
Right. I mean, I do know.
In grad school in political science, you're going to meet some libertarians.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
and
not me.
It's not great. So.
Social ecology didn't have a whole lot of libertarian type people.
But when they're just left on their own, they don't do a whole lot of harm. When they don't have power, I should say, they don't do a lot of harm. When they do gain power over others, though, bad things can happen. And this is what happened in Grafton, New Hampshire, unsurprisingly. So as you might imagine, the Freetown folks, they didn't advertise their strategy and their intent. They just kind of said, "Hey, everybody." They're on chat boards and stuff like this. Just again, 2004. Come on to Grafton. Here's the plan. They communicated, on the down low with one another, and then they just started moving in.
Yeah,
moving into tents, moving into homes, and they set up their camps or their businesses or whatever.
But how does that work? Because even if with no zoning laws, the property is owned by somebody.
I'm sure that they bought property, or that tent city, I believe, was just in
public land.
I guess maybe? It must have been. Yeah, I don't know. They once they reached what they thought was a critical level, an appreciable chunk of the population, though, then they started to try to make their influence felt. And that was pretty quickly. Just as unsurprisingly, when the locals in Grafton realized what was happening, that they'd effectively been invaded by this very kind of this
Weirdos.
group with this radical agenda bent on completely changing their town, they were very unhappy. I mean, maybe these newcomers were not eating their cats and dogs. I don't know, maybe they were, but they were trying to like slash budgets, defund the police, decimate public schools. They just, you swoop in and say, everything's different. We have this great idea. We're going to apply it here to your town. Because that's now our town. And we're going to do this social experiment that we think will be a beacon to the rest of the world to show them how great libertarianism is and how it can work at least a local level. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Even if you agree with a lot of their tenets, you probably wouldn't be very happy at that. And people of Grafton were not. So the old citizens got together, as a New England community would do, and they had a big town meeting. They said, let's get together in town meeting. Let's talk about these newcomers, these free town people, right? Ton of anger. They're swapping stories about, hey, this guy did this guy did that to me. These odd newcomers. A handful of the Freetowners actually showed up, and they got an earful of how, you're not welcome here. You're not, we don't like you. We want no part of this little ideological experiment. They always felt, though, that they were kind of saviors. They felt that, there's some people in the town saying that, but we think we have a silent majority on our side, and that really the naysayers, they're going to come around eventually and see how smart we are when we shake things up here and make their lives better, which is what we're going to do. We're going to free them from the shackles of big government, and they're going to thank us.
Yeah.
They really did feel that. Despite the antagonism, though, they faced at that meeting and elsewhere, they had built up some pretty substantial numbers by now, and they became very active and motivated. And again, what I said earlier is that, they went to every meeting. They sued people.
Yeah.
They did a lot of litigation, and they started changing policies, or at least proposing policies at the town level of Grafton. They didn't win them all. They were unable to, for instance, entirely withdraw from the county school district. That did not pass. They were not able to completely end all road repairs by the government. And they also weren't able to declare Grafton a, quote, United Nations free zone, unquote, because that's important. That's one of the things about libertarian, too. They have these weird ideas. People like personal sovereignty, like I'm my own nation.
Yeah.
You can't. A lot of the weirdness is on that really anti-government libertarian wing of our political spectrum. And a lot of these people had things like that. So, you needed to name this community of 1,000 people in rural New Hampshire a United Nations free zone, because that would have any effect on anyone in the world. It's
I don't
childish.
even know what that would mean.
It doesn't. It means nothing. It means the United Nations can't come in here and rule with the blue helmets and take it like they're going to do for the rest of the country. It's weird conspiracy theory nonsense.
It's the whole one world order weirdos.
Exactly.
So were these people paying federal income taxes?
There's lots and lots of tax cheating among libertarians. Just ask Wes Snipes.
Because isn't that what that whole personal sovereignty thing is?
They're trying to not pay any taxes whatsoever. Some of them also deny that police can have no jurisdiction. If I'm going to go 100 miles an hour, there's nothing you goddamn will do about it.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of it is tax. A lot of it comes back to the money.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
So they did win some battles, though, through both votes, but also this constant litigation. They sued for everything. The Freetowners were able to cut budgets. They led the charge to slash police services. They cut the budget for firefighting services. They cut the budget for road services a lot, not entirely, but a lot.
Yeah.
And they cut the budget for the public library to bare bones. They got rid of the Senior Citizens Council, disbanded it completely. They almost, in this really kind of underhanded way, they were able to they had a surprise vote when almost no one was at this meeting, and they cut the school budget in half, the public school budget in half.
Wow.
The rational people who were there is like calling their friends, get her right now. It was too late. Luckily, there was like some law in New Hampshire, if more than half the town shows up and it wins and they can have a vote within the next, short period, they could overturn it. They did exactly that. The rational people banded together, had this vote. all came to the meeting and won 377-2
Oh, wow.
to redo to bring back the original budget for the
Yeah.
schools. But the Freetowners were winning a lot of these battles. So the Freetowners, again, they're more or less, it seems like they're more or less in control of the town council, because they were able to have town funds pay for some of the litigation that in these lawsuits that were trying to like set up precedents. Like these weird legal theories, things like that. They're trying to use their town to set up like state or even federal precedents paid for by the town, but the town
Yeah.
had no budget for anything else
Yeah.
at all. No, I'm sorry, we don't have the money for anything else. So there were consequences. Town offices had to remain unheated through the freezing winter because they didn't have any money to pay for utilities.
Oh my gosh.
The potholes and other hazards quickly made the roads dangerous and damaging, in some places impassable. So the roads just went to shit. There was no money to repair them. Very little money, and it ran out quickly.
Yeah.
The
You mean
police
neighbors weren't
Carrie.
taking up a collection to get their street repaired?
That's how it should be done. I'm sure they would have eventually. The police were left with just the chief of police and that's all, just the chief of police. It was a one-man police force, just the chief. That's it.
Really?
He had
Wow.
one police vehicle. That vehicle had engine troubles and was out of commission. The town had no money to fix his single police vehicle, so he had no ability to go and respond to any calls except on foot. Imagine that. Your one cop cannot drive anywhere to respond to any kind of crime, emergency, anything.
Okay, so this is a public safety issue now.
Oh, yeah.
So were any citizens appealing to county or state authorities?
That's a good question. I don't
Because
know. That's interesting.
you
Yeah, I
think
don't
as
know.
a citizen, if you had something go wrong,
Yeah.
you could sue.
I don't
mean?
know. I don't know. I will sort of just allude back to New Hampshire. It was a very small government place, so that may have been difficult in a place like
Yeah.
New Hampshire to get
Huh.
any kind of recourse. I don't know though.
What about their fire department?
That was bare bones. That was
So
slashed. Their
did
budget was
houses
slashed.
burn down?
I
mean,
we'll
do you have
we'll
any
get to.
examples of?
I do.
Okay.
Not about houses burned down, but I'll get to some
Okay.
others. There was also trash collection. They crushed the trash collection budget. So trash collection became very haphazard and trash piled up at places. At the same time, these freedom-loving libertarians, they couldn't be bothered to always properly dispose of their trash, even their human waste. Since remember, many of them lived without plumbing. So
Yeah.
they're like shit in the woods and things like that.
Nice.
No government was going to tell them to properly dispose of their trash. God damn it. And there was no money left to do so, so they didn't. And that's going to have some serious consequences we're going to get to in a minute. That particularly will. But to answer your previous question, crime did run rapid.
Yeah.
Crimes increased
bet.
dramatically, immediately. Domestic disputes increased, and there's nothing to be done about it. I mean, essentially, think about that.
Yeah.
When the cops come to settle that down and stop someone from getting murdered or something like that, or getting beaten, there was no cop to do that unless it was the chief of police, and he could run there in time. And so... and there were no private sector answers or services that emerged to fix any of these problems, despite the tenets of libertarian credo that said
Yeah.
that's exactly what happened. Literally none of that happened. So apparently the Freetimers they had no time for fixing these problems and setting up these private groups that could handle these problems. They did, however, have time for doing things like staging confrontations with the county sheriff so they can post it on YouTube and have all the assholes on YouTube and say, "Yeah, right, man, stand up for your rights, brother." That kind of shit. They did a bunch. I guess they did a bunch of YouTube videos about this experiment in Grafton, and
Yeah.
a lot of times they would, have these confrontations with higher levels of law enforcement. Also, by the way, the number of registered sex offenders grew from 8 to 22. Shocking in a town without any kind of local law enforcement that able to track people like that. Surprising.
Yeah.
How many sex offenders? Again, libertarians are going to get pissy at me for saying this, but there is absolutely a vein of libertarianism, which is
They're just pedophiles.
yeah,
Yeah.
there absolutely is.
Yeah.
I know it's extreme even for libertarianism. I get that. I'm not saying it's a core tenet of that, but there is a faction within
Yeah.
that who are essentially, it's like, hey, if a child wants to pose for pornography, that's their business. There's
Yeah.
literally that mentality there. Again, that's not the vast majority, I'm sure, of libertarians wouldn't feel like that And I don't want to paint them with that kind of a broad brush, but it does attract those kinds
Yeah.
of things because of its core tenets.
Yeah.
And so there were. I mean, there just was. The number of sex offenders tripled in Grafton
Yeah.
very quickly. There was also the first murder in Grafton County, as no one living can remember when the last murder was. When
Yeah.
this occurred, it was a double homicide in a dispute between roommates because, man, the chief of police, he couldn't run there fast enough to have cooler heads prevail and cool that situation down, and 2 people lost their lives because of that. And then, Carrie, came the bears.
Oh, I
What?
forgot about
You
the
forgot about the bears,
bears.
didn't you? I told you I'd come back to the bears. I'm not leaving the bears alone. I'm coming back to the bears. Remember those people living in tents and yurts,
Yeah.
shit in the woods and tossing the trash wherever the hell they wanted to? Because,
Yeah.
freedom. Even those folks who had trash cans and garbage bins among these free towners often didn't secure them properly because, again, freedom, and no one can make me do that. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. That's not even parody. That's absolutely true. That is truly their attitude.
Yeah.
I might, if I want to do it, I will. If I don't, it's my business. It's
Yeah.
not yours. Grafton, though, is bear country. There are lots of black bears in Grafton. This is a forested area. It's a rugged area. Black bears are not as big as grizzlies, but think of a big, scary dog. Multiply it in size by 2, 3, 4 times. Give it much bigger teeth. Give it 3-inch claws that they know how to use, and you've got a black bear. If you've seen a lot of TikTok videos and they look cute and people are feeding them or something like that, believe me, they can kill you. And if you are attacked by a black bear, you are supposed to fight back because they're not grizzly bears. If you play dead, that's the accepted wisdom right now. The most current is that grizzly bears will leave you alone eventually if they think you're dead. Black bears,
Eventually.
yeah, they might do some serious damage, but if you face the ground and don't let them flip you, they'll try and flip you. If you don't let them flip you, because you're able to hold on, then most of the time they'll leave you alone, or they'll go away. They'll do some damage, but they'll go away. Black bears won't, though. So black bears, they're not like polar bears who are for sure going to eat you, but black bears will sometimes try to consume you. So the wisdom for black bears is fight them. You're going to probably lose if they really, but you could scare them away. So give it a shot. Just helpful hint to all those folks out there who might be going to the forest with black bears right now. In Grafton, though, the black bears started becoming unbelievably bold. Bears are also very smart. So quickly, these black bears realized that these new people in Grafton, they're leaving their trash out wherever they wanted to. Their trash cans didn't have any secure mechanisms on that you can. It's fairly common in bear country to use trash cans that are secured and can be broken into by bears.
Yeah.
And they quickly realized that these new people had lots of things they're throwing out nearby that were edible. And black bears are all about caloric intake to build up for the winter. So they will eat anything. They're incredibly omnivorous. They'll eat anything that's remotely edible.
Yeah.
So, and they soon realized, the bears did, that the houses and those hovels and those tents and things like that, those were sources of food.
Yeah.
And they could go into this place called Grafton and get that food. And they did. They started walking through the middle of town, going up to trash cans, going to the trash bins, flipping over a bin and scarfing on the microwave burrito and Hot Pockets, I'm assuming, in that trash, going in people's trash cans, invading people's tents. They were, almost very quickly, they became this unbelievable, dangerous nuisance. Right in the middle, Grafton became, you were afraid to walk out your door, you might walk into a black bear in Grafton, New Hampshire.
Wow.
That's amazing. They would often walk right up to the front yards of homes and beg for food. Give me food.
Yeah.
They'd go to the doors of homes. They started scratching and sniffing around, and often they would try to get inside your house.
Yeah.
And they're smart.
Yeah.
They can do that. Things that used to scare bears, started not scaring them. I'll bang a pot and pan, they'd walk off. They wouldn't walk off. Or if they're, a lot of times in the past, if a black bear was eating your trash or something like that, and a human walked over and said, "Hey, get out of here, bear," they'd run away. They wouldn't do that. They'd look at him and say, "Go fuck yourself. I'm going to finish this burrito." And they would. Pets and household animals like chickens in the backyard started disappearing all over Grafton. Again, all these things had not been going on before the Freetowners came to town. A woman is in her front yard playing with her kittens. Suddenly, she sees a black blur rush from out of the woods
no.
right near her. It drops in front of her, grabs 2 kittens, and gulps them down and eats them and walks away.
Oh
Nothing she could do about it. I
no.
know.
Okay,
Many,
in the wild,
yeah.
do bears eat small animals typically?
If they can, that doesn't happen. If you're playing with your kitten, they're
No. I mean, do
No.
they eat
I'm
chipmunks and
I'm sure they do anything. They'll eat anything they can for
Okay.
sure. Again, they're omnivorous though. Black bears are mostly, I mean, most of their eating like roots and
Yeah,
and
that's what I
berries and
thought.
things like that. But no, they will eat meat. They'll scavenge meat and they'll hunt. They're not, weirdly enough, they're not really great hunters because they're so big and noisy.
Yeah.
They're ambush hunters. Are very often they'll scavenge it from like a coyote or something like that because they'll just go, get away, I'm a
Yeah.
bear, and they'll finish the meal.
Okay.
But they eat a lot of non-meat. Here, it was easy to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your chickens. I can walk through town and get your dog.
Yeah.
So I'm going to eat that. And many bears would just post up on the porches and say, feed me. And again, they would try to get in through your doors and windows, which would
Wow.
be absolutely terrifying. So this is bad enough because all these irresponsible people who were not handling their waste right were getting these bears to act differently and come into town, which is, again, not to put all the blame on them, but mostly it was these Freetowners. Again, people hadn't done this before. This had never happened before the Freetowners came into Grafton.
Yeah.
Some of them made it much, much worse because, wait for it, they fed the bears. This one woman, she spoke with the author that I mentioned a minute ago, Hangolt Hetling, or Hangols Hetling. I can't remember his name. Sorry about that. But she only called herself, he wrote that book, right? And she said, use the name Donut Lady from me. She wouldn't give him her real name or wouldn't let him use her real name, probably for a good reason, because she would load up buckets with grain and then toss some sugary donuts on top of them and go and set them out for the bears to go eat in her front yard. Just a crazy, insane, incredibly irresponsible, dangerous, stupid thing to do.
Did she just think she was being nice to the cute bears?
She did it because she wanted to, and she was a Freetown libertarian, so she had that God-given right to feed the bears if she wanted to. Sorry. With perfect libertarian reasoning, she said, hey, that's what I want to do. It's not my problem if those bears go to other people's houses and expect the same kind of handouts. That's your problem. I'm doing my thing. You do yours. That's literally was her attitude about it.
Okay.
This, despite the fact, by the way, her next door neighbor, lived in fear of the bears, shut herself in her house. She said, the neighbor, on the days that she ate meat, she wouldn't leave the house for hours because she was afraid they'd smell it on her when she walked out. She might not be super rational herself, but she was so afraid that she wouldn't leave for hours when she ate meat. So, and again, the donut lady's like, I don't care. That's her problem, not mine. Don't make it my neighbor. This kind of not my problem vein of reasoning led many of the Freetown folks to deny that they even had any responsibility to respond and that they needed to respond despite this alarming bear behavior. It's like, if people want to feed it, people want to dispose of their trash the way they do, that's their business. There's nothing government can say about that. There's nothing we can't restrict their freedoms. That literally was their response. So there was really no response to this from the town officially. That that's logic according to libertarianism. It just, again, I know if there's any libertarians listening, they get pissed every time I say something like that. I'm sorry, that's your view.
Yeah.
It just is. You hate government, so government can do almost nothing or should do almost nothing. So when these things happen where a rational person says maybe it should respond, you have to say no, it shouldn't. Otherwise, you're not a libertarian, or you're not as libertarian as you thought you are. So this culminated in 2012 with 2 separate bear attacks on people. Both were against women inside their homes. That's how brazen the bears had become by this point.
Yeah. Neither
Neither one of them died, but both were badly mauled. One was left so shaken, she was just terrified. She warned her neighbors in the town. She said, you've really got to be careful of these bears. I just went through it. It's horrible. She said, quote, if you look at their eyes, you understand that they're completely alien to us, end quote. Which sounds more like a white shark.
Yeah.
Bears are actually pretty intelligent, so I don't know about that. But hey, she was just attacked by a bear, so I'm not going to begrudge her that.
Yeah.
These were the first attacks by bears in 100 years in the state of New Hampshire,
wow.
not in Grafton, in the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So, Hongoltz Hetling, the writer, he wrote the book. The book, by the way, is called "What If a Libertarian Walked into a Bear?" And he spends a lot of time in that book wondering, like, oh, maybe there was something different. Maybe there's something like climate change or something like that. And he tries to sort of explain how the bear's behavior might have been altered by something else. He's being almost overly fair, if that's a thing.
Because why would it only happen there?
It only happened
yeah.
there, and it only happened after the Freetowners came to
Yeah.
Grafton and started doing the things they did.
I mean, it's pretty clear.
It's incredibly clear.
Yeah.
It's just, don't do that.
Yeah.
Look, those people, I'm so tired of people like trying to be like overly fair. Trust me, the people on the other side of the aisle are going to not just not be overly fair to you, they're going to lie through their teeth about
Yeah.
what you do and what you're motivated by. So you don't owe them shit. Just be
Yeah.
honest. Be honest. Don't lie like they do, but don't overdo it. Don't
Right.
both sides it. Don't
Yeah.
say, maybe it was something. No, it was them. It was no question whatsoever. It was the activities of the Freetowners that caused these change in behavior to the bears.
Yeah.
Through both an unwillingness to take on these new troubles and an inability to do so because there was really not much of a government left, the Grafton experiment kind of found itself way, way over his head. Hongoltz Hetling, the writer again, wrote that, quote, Freetowners were finding that the situations that had been so easy to problem solve in the abstract, in the abstract medium of message boards, were difficult to resolve in person, end quote, which is the whole nut of trying to apply libertarian precepts to the real world. It
Yeah.
just, like you said at the very beginning, it just simply doesn't work in every
Yeah.
way possible. Infighting starts to eat away at the Freetown folks. Some, like Barbiez, who again founded this whole thing, this whole Freetown movement, he bemoaned how some of the brethren didn't understand the responsibilities of being a libertarian, which is pretty weird because libertarianism at its core, it kind of its precept is that you don't really have responsibilities to
Right.
the community. You have responsibility just to yourself. You don't really have any. I mean, you can if you want rationally to band together and do whatever, but it's not your responsibility. You don't have to.
Yeah.
So he and his wife also she had founded the group with him. They started being attacked as quote unquote statist. They started the real pure libertarian type started arguing against them and denigrating them. Some of them kept feeding bears. A lot of them kept tossing the trash wherever they wanted to. Other people in town would stay indoors 24/7.
Yeah.
People started walking around town with firecrackers so they can light the firecrackers if they saw a bear and hopefully scared away, which the kind of things that used to deter them were less and less deterring these
Yeah.
bears. After one of those attacks I mentioned, a group of unnamed vigilantes banded together with all their weapons. This must have been in winter because they are close to winter because they went out and they found a bunch of bear dens and they killed over a dozen bears in their dens as kind of retribution, thinking, okay, that'll show them.
Yeah.
It's illegal by state law. You can't do that. I mean, it didn't matter to them.
Right.
The state can't tell them what to do. And it also didn't work whatsoever. The
Yeah.
bears came right
Yeah.
back. There's plenty of bears in that area. Failures in the town mounted. One libertarian residential community development. They're going to build this. They named it something Gulch after an Ayn Rand, a town in an Ayn Rand book.
Yeah.
It's like, we're going to build this beautiful, beautiful city on the hill. It went bankrupt. The newly minted Reverend John Connor, remember?
Yeah.
The church, he never got his tax exemption and he couldn't afford to maintain his church. His heat got turned off. I guess he did like one last sermon and then he died in a fire. I'm not sure if maybe, I don't know, was he building a fire in the house because I don't know, but he died in a fire I think in his church. Adam France, he was the guy who founded that tent city. He abandoned the tent city of survivalists, this great survivalist tent commune that he was trying to found. One of the reasons because they were forced to build a wall around their tent city to almost live in something like a prison because the bears kept on coming
Right.
into the tent city and helping themselves and endangering them. John Barbariez, the founder who started the whole thing, he increasingly, as I mentioned, came under attack by all these purists because he wanted to do some things. Let's kind of deal with these bears and these bear attacks and this bear nuisance. And he also, but like one of the last straws, one of the things that really pissed off the libertarians is that he tried to stop them from building bonfires on dry, high wildfire risk days.
Jeez.
Because I'm a libertarian. If I want to build a fire, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter that my fire could start a massive forest
Yeah.
fire. It's my peace-loving, freedom-loving right as an American. So, I mean, obviously, John Barbarius knew nothing of freedom. Some in Grafton did try to grapple with the bear problem, and so they'd bring up measures. Okay, let's do this. Can we do this? Remember, this is years. This has gone on for years.
Yeah.
Finally, in 2013, concerned citizens proposed that the town at least install bear-proof mechanisms on all trash cans. So if you had a trash can, if you throw out trash, you had to just put this bear-proof mechanism. Again, I don't think that's uncommon
Yeah.
in areas where bears are common. It's
Yeah.
a common sense thing so the bears don't associate human habitations with food. The Freetowners, who I guess must have run the town council at this point, they thought that's going way too far. That's government run amok, and they voted down that initiative 14-0.
Wow.
So it's still around. It's been obviously a horrific failure. It's completely ruined the town of Grafton. I don't know if they're still in power to this day. I don't know if they're still. I'm sure a lot of them are still there, but I think it's kind of it's settled down. And I don't
Did a lot of the original inhabitants of Grafton just move?
I don't think so. It's actually growing, and I don't think it's growing by just these libertarian folks anymore. But it is growing. I don't know. I didn't find anything that spoke to the current political makeup of the city of Grafton, the town of Grafton today. But obviously, it's been a terrible failure.
Yeah.
There, like I said, crime spiked. All those those
Sure.
terrible outcomes.
I would be interested to see how they run their families.
Yeah.
What kind of parents they are.
I'll bet you most of them are just pretty normal parents. And because again, when it's a lot of it is up here, I'm pointing above my head.
Yeah.
And it's not down here on the ground in the real world.
Yeah.
And this is a situation where they tried to do that. Libertarianism has never governed any place really in the modern world. Right now, Argentina has something like a libertarian, crypto-loving president.
Yeah.
And, I think inflation has come down, but otherwise there's been a lot of not great things happening there. But he's still not running it like a true libertarian paradise. Augusto Pinochet in Chile in the 1970s and 80s did very super conservative economic policies, but not like a true libertarian kind of a thing. They've never run anything. It kind of lives in theory, but libertarians still yearn, like any party does, to put their precepts into the real world. And Grafton, it's not the last word on this, but it really is a very stark real world illustration of what happens when these extremist theories are grafted onto a far more complex world than they're able to handle.
Yeah.
That to me is what Grafton serves as a lesson. Right now, as you know, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are effectively trying to do this a little bit like what the Freetowners did to Grafton. They're trying to do to our country.
Yep.
And there's no question. I mean, that's what slashing government, getting rid of services, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, Trump and Musk are not motivated by libertarian policies whatsoever. They're billionaires and grifters they're never motivated by principles. The principles are just a show. You talk about it like, oh, small government. That's never anti-government people on the economic side are never anti-government for any kind of a principle of value. It's very simple. It's just greed.
Yeah.
They know that all those public functions that they destroy can then be turned over, paid for by taxpayers, by the way, to private companies that would both enrich their friends and turn a profit for them, and also allow these politicians. People forget that when politicians can dole out contracts, it gives them power.
Yep.
So there's a combination of power and greed is the real. Again, you can disagree with that. It's still true. It just is.
Yeah.
There's no principles behind what Trump and Musk are doing right now whatsoever. Small government. It's sheerly a money grab. No sense. Musk is at the fore. He is got his fat mouth in that public trough more than anyone else does.
Yeah.
They hate government. I think libertarians, anti-government types hate government because it's the only public entity that can push back effectively against their excesses. It's really difficult for private institutions to do that.
Yeah.
Then they buy off and they silence a free media because a free attentive media is the only thing that can expose those excesses when they do them. So I don't know. The next Grafton could be our country, but who's going to be left to tell us about the bears? Because the media is being decimated, are bought off and co-opted. And is there going to be a town council that can say, no, you know what? You've gotten too far. You can't do that. and vote them out. Will we ever get that back? I honestly don't know. And I've not been one who's been an extremist on that issue. I've always said, no, we're not going to lose our democracy. I'm very worried that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what will happen. So we'll see. But we're living the experiment in a little way here now in the U.S., nationwide, that the Grafton folks in Grafton lived through for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Soon the bears are going to be in everybody's town. Soon will come the bears. So that's why I warn people. It's got a little political. I know I'm biased. That's my biases. I'm sorry if that offended you. Well, I'm not. But it's none of that's not true. Nothing here is untrue on a factual basis. And that's the only important thing. That's the most important thing. So what do you think about Grafton?
I mean, I don't know how the original citizens that I get that far.
I know.
But I don't know how the American citizens let the United States get this far.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
A lot of it's just through inattention. A lot of, like I said, it's people don't want to do the hard work of protecting their democracy or protecting even things that are important to them. Like the one time they really banded together and stopped it was when the Libertarians were going to absolutely destroy the public schools. So they were able to stop that, but they I don't know, whatever they did, it wasn't enough to stop a lot of other parts of the government from being slashed. And now they drive on shitty roads. Crime is higher. You don't know if there's a fire person who's going to come on the call. For sure there's not a cop who's going to come when you call. At least he'll be out of breath when he gets there. So,
and all of that is still that way now?
That's what I don't know. I'm not sure if it's still that bad. What I read went up to like 2014 or so.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if it's different or better or worse or the same these days. But it's been, again, I don't want to pretend like that's it. That's the nail in the coffin of libertarianism. But it's absolutely legitimate to say this is an illustration of those kinds of policies are deployed in the real world, the kinds of things that are likely to happen. That's exactly none of this, what happened, is surprising given the policies. If you don't repair the roads, who's going to repair them, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Because
concerns, that's just such utter nonsense.
Because people were still paying the same taxes and fees and all that kind of stuff as they always were.
I imagine,
and just not getting any services from it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I don't know how that works.
It's not like taxes, you automatically,
I don't know if they
have extra money.
Did they cut local taxes? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I really don't truly know that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. When you cut,
like
Musk and Trump are now talking about giving a $5,000 check to everybody because all that money they saved by cutting all these functions. As we now know, they haven't really saved anything.
Right.
The pronouncements of saving $16 billion are utter nonsense. And of course, there are consequences to all that money they're saying. That means a lot of things aren't going to get done. People are going to have to either they won't get done and bad things are going to happen at airports, in public parks and national parks and places like that. Or people are going to have to spend money, to get those services from the private sector, and it may or may not be available, and certainly would be more expensive. It's actually cost ineffective in a real sense, and it's has horrible repercussions and dislocations in the meantime.
Yeah. So, and it's not realistic. How do we do this?
None of it is.
Just the air traffic controllers.
Yeah.
Does the airlines each hire their own? And then charge more for airline tickets?
I will bet you talk to any airline official, and they will privately, because they don't want to piss off the people who run the world now. They will say, this is a terrible idea.
Oh, yeah,
we want
absolutely.
a really, really effective FFA. Do we want to be unregulated in the sense of we can charge people for anything we want to charge and things like that? Of course we do. We're a for-profit greedy company, like every single company.
And cut corners, training our pilots, and building our airplanes.
And pay them nothing? Absolutely. Yeah. But at the end of the day, do we want understaffed air traffic controls, towers, and things like that? Yeah. No, we don't want that.
They don't want their planes crashing into each other. They cost too much money.
Yes. So, and the $5,000, that's just... I don't know if it's every person, even if it's every household.
What's it supposed to be for?
Because they saved all the money. They have so much money from saving.
Yeah, sure.
It's a gigantic, I can't remember what that is, but that's an absolutely gargantuan amount of
Yeah.
money, by the way. And it's just a huge amount of money. It's just it's embarrassing
Yeah.
that they would think that's a thing that can be done. So, but that's how that's how you buy people off.
Mhm.
At least that's the idea. So
Well,
if you
that's
want
interesting.
Grafton nationwide, then by all means become a libertarian and keep on voting for people who
Or
who do
just
those
stick
things.
with the current Republican Party,
Yeah, we're gonna
maybe.
piss off so many people from this episode.
That's all
I
right.
did this on purpose. I mean, this is a telling, stark illustration of something that we are now
Yeah.
as a nation going down that road. And it's just think about it.
Yeah.
Look it up for yourself. Research it. Do the research. Research it yourself. Nothing I've said is not true. I'm not trying to spin it or anything like
Yeah.
that. They came in. They put in their policies super predictably. There were bad negative consequences, the exact kind of consequences you would expect from those policies, and that's what occurred. It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So that's the story of Grafton and the Bears. I don't know. Hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, sorry about that.
I'm gonna Google just some random person in Grafton and
Are you?
call him.
That's a good
and
idea,
try to-
actually.
Just ask him
Why didn't I think of
how
that?
things are going on.
Yeah.
And also, if you're in Grafton,
Tell us.
or near Grafton,
Especially if you're a free towner in Grafton, tell me what an asshole I am.
yeah, email us weirdworldpodcast@gmail.com.
Okay, that's a good idea, Carrie. Thank you for
Thanks.
that. All right,
Okay, see ya.
bye.